Hi. I am Liz and I'm an Associate Director at SCB Partners, and in the next 15 minutes I'm going to do something a little bit different. So we're going to look at a taste of some of the trends which are driving the be the boss mindset and how we think that the world of work is going to evolve, and also how employers can sort of keep on top and adapt towards this emerging mentality. So, who are we? SCB Partners is Havas's Trends and Insight Agency, and we specialise in taking a very long-term view about trends and strategies and scenario planning, often working into sort of the 2025s, 2030s and beyond. And we work with youth, and particularly with Gen Z, over a wide range of sectors and for different brands. So pick out a couple of very Gen Z ones we've done. We've very recently just created TLDR, which is Channel 4's Gen Z video platform. It's open access, you can visit it, it's interactive, and paints a picture of how the world of video and content's going to change. And we're currently working with Westfield to co-create homes of the future with Gen Z. So these are homes that won't even be built till the mid-2020s, and that's what we're working on at the moment. So, using our sort of future forward-facing thinking, what we wanted to do is take a look at what is the aspirational future of work for this generation, and what's that likely to look like, and the hopes and fears that will shape it. So I'm going to give you 3 drivers which are shaping their hopes and their fears now into the next decade, 3 actions that you can take now and other people are taking now to adapt, and 3 much longer term trends which are fascinating, which might give an indication as to what you'll see in the next sort of 13 years time. So to start out with, Gen Z's aspirations are really increasingly independent. So we know that since the recession, we've seen a massive growth in the freelance economy, and that's been especially with younger people. And that is a mix of different things. There's an element of the gig economy and zero-hours contracts, which was mentioned by Tanya. It's not always a good thing. It's often work that's layered on top of study, on top of other jobs to make ends meet. But we have also seen a big shift towards independent working. So the rise of the startup, bedroom industries, people doing Etsy and Big Cartel, and people choosing to freelance as an approach towards work. And all of that adds up to being a much more fluid vision as to what your work life might look like in the future. So freelancing site People Per Hour, who do have a vested interest in this statistic, believe that about half the UK population by 2020 will likely be doing some sort of additional work to their main job or study. So this idea of compartmentalising and having much more freedom and independence is part of the future more so than it's been to date. And this is happening at a really interesting time in the world of work. So we're at the beginning of the 4th industrial revolution, and that essentially means that AI is going to impact the world of work, and we're going to see about 5 million jobs go in 15 big economies, including ours, before 2020, which is only 3 years away. That doesn't sound like very much, but by 2025, the Retail Consortium thinks that we'll have lost 1/3 of all of our retail jobs to automation. So what does that future work landscape look like? What jobs are going to be on the table? And no wonder they feel like everything's very uncertain. This issue is a particularly pronounced issue in the UK. Only half of young British people believe that they have got the skills to survive this and to get through the situation. It's very telling that if you look at the data for other emerging economies, confidence is way higher. So bar France, who is generally quite negative in research, the UK is one of the lowest confidence levels. And if that wasn't so bad, 45% of young Brits fear that their jobs could be imminently replaced. What are they going to do instead of these jobs? So if you've ever felt underqualified for a role and unsure of what you're going to do, how would these sorts of jobs make you feel? Being an avatar programmer or an organ designer or somebody responsible for training AI and people to work together. These all sound incredibly futuristic. Microsoft and Google have just come out saying that they're going to be advertising for these jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. Particularly organ designers a bit later, the others are already entering the table now. They are going to be entering a world of work where the jobs simply don't exist today. And it will not be as easy to access as when I was a bit younger and then social media became a job and you could be a strategist. That's an easier jump from marketing than it is becoming an avatar programmer. So it's a very intimidating work future. So what do we know? Regardless, we know that the future is going to be uncertain. And in that world, technology may well be your competitor. And young people are really afraid, especially in the UK, that they're going to have to fight to keep up with these skills. They're going to have to fight just to get a good job. So how are they going to adapt to that insecurity? So I work with a company called Voxburner that run the YMS. I don't know if any of you have been to it. It's the biggest youth marketing summit. They do it in the UK and the States, and as of this year, doing it in Asia as well. The great organisation, and their biggest trend and research piece for this year was called the Superhuman. And that was the idea that we're having a big rise now amongst young people who are starting to put exceptional pressure on themselves to learn and to excel and to pick up on a lot of what Graham said, feeling really bloody anxious about it and really worried. And what they found in a big study at the beginning of the year was that 84% of 16 to 24s in the UK believe it is important to continuously improve their skills and to keep on going. This in itself can be a big source of stress. But when you look at what those skills are that they're layering on top of their education, coding tops that list, then languages, then physical and mental well-being, sort of resilience skills for getting through the world of work. And they know already, and we see this a lot with the work that we're doing with this audience, that academic attainment alone isn't going to be enough. It really harks into what the other speakers have said. They're so focused on keeping up with opportunity, and we're having these conversations with children that are younger and younger and younger. And all of this has been quite inspired by the idea of the teen CEO or the young polymaths, so people that have really wide skills and knowledge and learning. And we're seeing this with some of the young people that we work with here at SCB, whereby they introduce themselves as being these multifaceted, multi-skilled and multi-talented people. They don't come in saying, I can do marketing. They come in saying, I'm a director, I'm an editor, I'm a blogger, I'm a social media strategist, and I can speak at events. And that's their broad skill set. And a lot of that is actually skills beyond their study or what they've achieved professionally. And we're also meeting a lot of young people who are experiencing the reality of work already. So people running businesses from their bedrooms, people selling on Facebook, wavy arms, big cartel, and actually getting experience of bookkeeping and all of these marketing strategies that we're seeing. And that idea of DIY success has been incredibly glamorized in our youth culture society. So I don't know if any of you have watched Girl Boss. It's new on Netflix. It's about Sophia Amoruso's Nasty Gal brand, so it's sort of drama but based in reality. It's somewhat inane, I'm going to be honest, but it does reflect this whole culture of the boss. And we get a lot of language and lots of references now, particularly for younger women, about being the boss and being the one in control and creating their own paths in life. And we're seeing some youth-savvy brands already starting to use this idea. So Days Digital, you would expect that they should be good at this. They've now changed their recruitment so that you can trade your influencer capital. If you're creating good content, you've got good followers, that can be part of your application process. And Penguin Random House, they've taken qualifications off their recruitment so that you can trade in other areas of the application process. And I felt that the tech entrepreneur Eddie Zhong, who specializes in youth, he really encourages this trend of being a DIYer, being an independent opportunity creator, saying that while school can make you academically intelligent, it somewhat diminishes children's creativity and can force them to think a certain way. And his position is that we need to start encouraging creativity and encouraging this individuality, partly as a survival mechanism for the future. So, we know that the next generation, they're ambitious, they're independent, but they are anxious and they are afraid. And to call on a lot of what Tanya was saying, they probably don't really know what they're getting themselves into and can make quite bad decisions as a result. So what we're looking at is how can this mindset, maybe quite negative mindset, become a benefit? How can we encourage entrepreneurialism and harness those talents? So for me, really noted trend forecaster, Shanu Walpeter, she's fantastic. She was talking about this earlier on in the year and really summed it up. We need to nurture this multi-hyphenated lifestyle. We need to nurture these people that believe that they're multi-talented and they're multi-skilled. But we need to be very intelligent in how we approach and market them. They are a different type of consumer. And for them, it's about understanding, for us, their real worth and what they genuinely want. It's fair to say it is no longer about having a googly office. That will not be enough. It's about making work feel good and enriching and inspiring everybody to do a little bit more. So first of the 3 ways to feed this freelance mindset is to celebrate their individuality. They really fear being overlooked as a piece of a puzzle, and they work in a world of social media, of dating apps, whereby you are often just a count amongst thousands. How can we show them that they're independent? And we've seen a big shift in the discourse around this. So the millennials that were quite teamwork and togetherinessy, Gen Zs are not. They're much more individualistic and they're much more competitive, and they're focused on me, developing my multi-skill set and developing my skills. And this comes out really well in the data. So rather than opportunities to work with their peers, you've now got 72% of Gen Zs saying that they're actively competitive in their roles and they want to be judged individually on their own merits, not as part of a bigger group. Secondly, we need to help them survive and thrive by giving freedom that's closely driven by results. So we've had a lot of traditional workplace dynamics, things like presenteeism, 9 to 5s, how you dress, what your hair's like, can you see your tattoos? A lot of these things that for any generation entering the workplace has probably felt a little restrictive. We have that even more now. And as you might have noticed, we went for a really twee colourway throughout this presentation. It's rare that hot pink and purple are how we present ourselves, but we wanted to do that on purpose because it highlights how we expect professionalism to look a certain way and to dress a certain way and to fit a certain ideal. That will not be the case in the future. We will be judging people based upon their content and their worth, not how they're going to position themselves. And this idea of freedom and this idea of being able to work remotely in this digital future, work more individualistically in their future, is an idea that successful businesses already really harbour and enjoy. So 50 to 60% of Fortune 100 employees tend to work away from their desks, and that's because they get better results from it. And one of the biggest challenges that I think we're going to see is, as an employer, how do you manage remote workers? How do you manage freedom? Often the reason people aren't given freedom isn't because they can't work responsibly, it's because we can't manage them and control them properly. And we've got to deal with that dynamic because it's going to happen. Finally, we need to really help Gen Z become more digitally savvy. And that might sound kind of strange. We know that these people are constantly connected. They've got all these platforms. They're incredibly agile. But as Deborah was talking about, they're having lots of probably quite meaningless communications every day. And their attention span is down to reportedly between 6 and 8 seconds. It might sound awful, but it is the #1 concern that they talk about on focusing on their work. How can we help them focus and help them feel like they're being productive? So we need to take a really direct interest in that digital resilience. How can we train them to focus, to concentrate, to be productive? And also, how can we do that? In an online world where a lot of communication isn't very reliable, it's not necessarily authentic or genuine, how can we show them that we're really important and we care about you even if you're remote? So out of a range of values as to what young people cared about, at 51%, the highest one was the privilege of human connection and having a real conversation with your employer. And we feel like you're going to see this splitting whereby you work more remotely, you work more online, but then you invest properly in face-to-face communication and building genuine relationships. Because Gen Z deeply care about the quality of these transactions in a world where they know that a lot of transactions maybe aren't as genuine as they seem. So to wrap up, wanted to give you a little taste of the future. So this is the longer term future, really, because it's based in the nows. So what will be normal in maybe the 2020s and beyond that. And maybe you're not going to walk away today applying these things, but it's interesting and it hopefully will spark some thoughts. So the first thing is that we're going to enter into an age of emotional creative intelligence. And that simply means that in automation, we will start to invest in the skills that computers simply can't do. And that sort of emotional skills, emotional dexterity, creative thinking is something that we're already seeing a big shift towards. So You might be familiar with IDEO, design agency, fantastic agency in London, and they have a design thinking course that teaches individuals and organisations how to think through play and how to create through play. And that idea to fluid working and fluid creativity is incredibly valuable. And we think that employers will need to start recruiting for this abstract skill and also starting to foster it better within their own companies to create results. Secondly, and this is a personal favourite of mine, we are seeing the rise of personal ability hacking. So this essentially means cognitive enhancers, drugs, called nootropics as a group, and they help your ability to concentrate, to stay focused, to stay awake, to think critically. It's a bit like the film Limitless. And they are real, and you can buy them, and in the last 2 years, their sales have surged amongst 16 to 24s in the UK and the States. They've always been quite big in the States. But they are a booming industry, and back in January, we did a piece of quant with 16 to 24s in the UK. We asked them where they stood on different elements of drug legalisation. There was more support for study aids and cognitive enhancers to be legal than there was for tobacco in that study, representing this shift and this quite brutal dog-eat-dog attitude towards individualistic success as something that will give me a step up. And employers need to think about this. It really affects universities as well with modafinil and study aids, but how are we going to help people become their best? And where will we stand on issues like this? Is it fair if you've got some of your people using them and then some of them not? Don't put it in the water, though. It's not fair. Finally, we're going to see gender and hierarchy neutral places really becoming the norm. So this feels like something that's in the media a lot over the last couple of years, particularly relevant element for Gen Z. And although it's something that's quite trendy, it's not necessarily applied in the workplace. And we think that we're going to see many, many elements of workplaces have to adapt to become flatter and to feel more accessible and welcoming to a generation which is more diverse and, as Graham talked about, more inclusive and welcoming than ever before. They cannot walk into these environments and think, this is like madman, I will not survive. I will not thrive in this environment. And all of these things are going to contribute in the longer term to a much sort of more remote and individualistic, but much more human and empathetic future of work. So, as a whistle-stop tour of the future, I hope that that inspired a little bit of longer-term thinking, some interesting ideas, and what you could do to help Gen Z survive and thrive in this future automated world.